The prairie wind roared across the empty land, dragging the scent of smoke and thunder in its wake. The sky was swollen with storm clouds, black and heavy, ready to burst open over the broken plains. In the distance, fire licked at the edge of the horizon, where homesteads once stood proud. The valley below had turned to chaos, families fleeing in wagons, cattle scattering through the fields, and men shouting orders that the wind tore away before they reached another ear. But one man rode the opposite direction, straight into the madness. His coat snapped behind him, his hat low against the rain that had begun to fall. The people of Bitter Creek had learned to recognize that silhouette even from afar. When others ran, he rode forward. They said a family had been forced to flee. When the raiders came, savages from the far canyon lands, men who took what they wanted and burned what they couldn't carry. The news had reached town like a knife through the heart, and the saloon had emptied into the muddy street as settlers whispered of what they'd seen. They said everyone had gotten out, except for one. No one knew who. Only that someone had been left behind. When the horses broke loose and the fire roared too close. A twisted leg, a broken wheel, something had gone wrong. And in the panic, the family had been forced to make the hardest choice of all. The cowboy didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. He just threw his saddle on his horse, checked the rifle slung across his back, and tightened the reins. "You'll never make it," the blacksmith called after him. The orange glow of the fire already visible beyond the ridge. "The storm's comin' in, and those hills are crawling with raiders." But the cowboy didn't slow. He just looked back once, a streak of lightning cutting across his face, and said, "Then I'll ride faster than the storm." The land was a blur of wind and flame as he pressed on. The rain came in bursts, heavy and hard, slashing sideways across his face. The ground turned slick beneath the hooves. But his horse kept steady, breathing heavy but sure. When he reached the edge of the valley, the world had turned red and black. The homestead was half gone, walls collapsed, fences burned to ash. Smoke curled from the roof beams, and the smell of scorched earth filled the air. He dismounted slowly, rifle in hand, and listened. The thunder rolled like the voice of judgment across the sky. Then he heard it, a faint sound, like a sob carried on the wind. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing, and followed the noise through the ruined corral. There, near a fallen wagon, he found her, small, trembling, her hands pressed against her face. Her dress was torn, her hair matted with soot. Fear had made her eyes wide, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She had been left behind, forgotten in the rush to survive. When she looked up and saw him, disbelief crossed her face like a shadow. "You came back," she whispered, her voice cracking. He nodded once. "Steady and calm. Couldn't leave you to the fire." Lightning flashed again. And in that split second he saw the truth of her situation, the fire closing in from the south, the river flooding from the north. There was only one path left, a narrow ridge leading up toward higher ground. But it was steep, rocky, and soaked from the storm. The horse wouldn't make it with both of them on its back. He looked at her, then at the sky. There wasn't time to think. He swung down from the saddle, lifted her gently, and set her on the horse. "Hold tight," he said. "Don't look back." "What about you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'll be right behind." With that, he slapped the reins, sending the horse forward. It stumbled once, then began the climb. The cowboy ran beside it, boots slipping on the mud, muscles burning as he pushed through the rain. Each step was a fight against the earth itself, the wind trying to tear him down, the smoke stinging his eyes. The fire hissed as the rain hit it, but it still came crawling up the slope behind them. When the horse faltered, he grabbed its bridle, guiding it along the narrow pass. Almost there, he grunted. "Keep going, you're gonna make it." His words were calm, but his heart pounded like thunder in his chest. At last, they reached the top of the ridge. The world below was a sea of smoke and water, the flames dying in the downpour. The girl clung to him, shaking as the storm broke in full. He pulled his coat around her shoulders, shielding her from the cold. Neither spoke for a long while. Only the rain spoke for them, washing away the dust, the fear, the pain. When she finally found her voice, it was small but full of awe. You came all the way back, for me. He looked out over the valley, where the fire had burned everything she'd ever known. His face was unreadable, carved from stone and rain. No one deserves to be left behind, he said softly. Not while I can still ride. For a long moment, there was only the storm, the smell of wet ash, and the soft sound of the horse breathing beside them. The world below would rebuild, the land would heal, but for now, they were safe. Higher ground. Above the ruin. Above the fear. The cowboy stood watch until the first light of dawn cut through the rain clouds. The wind had softened, carrying only the scent of wet earth and hope. He turned to the girl, still wrapped in his coat, and gave a small, reassuring nod. You'll be all right now. Folks'll come for you soon. She looked up at him, tears mixing with the rain. And you? He adjusted his hat, glanced toward the valley, and said, I've still got miles to ride. Then he walked to his horse, mounted up, and rode back down into the mist, alone again. As he had come. The story of the cowboy who rode back into the storm spread through Bitter Creek like wildfire. They said he rode straight into hell and brought someone back to heaven. They said no man had ever faced death so quiet and so sure. And though no one saw him again for months, the legend lived on. Because some men ride for gold. Some for glory, but a true cowboy rides for what's right. Days turned to weeks after the storm. And the valley began to breathe again. The settlers rebuilt fences, patched roofs, and buried what was lost. Whispers of the cowboy who rode back into the fire spread through every campfire and chapel pew. Some said he was a ghost from the old wars, others swore he was an angel in a hat. But the truth lay simpler, he was just a man who did what others wouldn't. The one he saved stayed near the town on the hill, helping the widows and the wounded. Her voice always steady when she spoke of him. She told no name, only the story of the ride, the rain, the fire, and the quiet strength in his eyes. The townsfolk built that tale into legend, and soon children played pretending to be the cowboy who never turned back. One evening, as the sun bled across the plains, a rider appeared on the horizon. Dust rose behind his horse, his coat torn, his hat shadowing his face. He stopped at the ridge where the fire once burned, and watched the new homes rising below. For a long while he sat still, silent as stone. Then turned his horse toward the west. No one saw him ride into town. No one heard his name again. But sometimes, when the wind blew across Bitter Creek, folks claimed they could hear a distant hoofbeat, steady, certain, unafraid. The sound of a man who rode not for glory, but for what was right. And those who listened close swore they could still feel his promise in the wind. No one gets left behind.